Thank you very much. If you had any doubt why you're here now, I hope you get the idea. I'd like to, at this point, call on Professor Njabulo Ndebele, the chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Nelson Mandela Foundation.
Good evening to you all, and I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of the Foundation to this event this evening, and to thank you for taking the time and the trouble to come and spend some moment of reflection this evening. And I'd also like to say what a pleasure it is to have you here, Mrs. Machel. Once more, it's a pleasure to have to welcome you back to the Foundation. You will be speaking to us later on this evening, and we're looking forward to your words. And also to Mr. Max Sisulu, who will also be speaking to us later on. And a word of welcome to Trevor Manuel and Maria Ramos. Thank you, Trevor, for all the tremendous work that you do for the Foundation. We appreciate the support that you give us continuously. And thank you once more, all of you, ladies and gentlemen. It might seem that the exhibition on the front line, part of the clip that you will have seen will have brought into focus, is a response by the Foundation to the present eruption of violence against those perceived to be foreigners. For it does speak very directly to the challenge posed by such violence. And it underscores the terrible failure of memory constituted by it. However, I have to make it very clear that the exhibition was actually conceptualized over a year ago after a meeting between the Foundation and the filmmakers Simon Bright and Ingrid Sinclair. At that meeting, Simon and Ingrid proposed exactly the exhibition you now see in the foyer, but the primary reason for the Foundation decided to do the exhibition was because of its relevance to the challenge of xenophobia. And already when we are concerned about its manifestations in many parts of the country, the eruptions of violence came as no surprise to many people who have carefully looked at the situation unfolding over the years. So then, even if the exhibition was planned a year ago, it also speaks to a sense of foresight and the continuity of certain things that happen in society that work according to a logic that seems to take you in a particular direction and land us exactly where we have landed at this moment. It all makes for a kind of meaning to it all, and a special focus of reflection by all of us. So our immediate response to the xenophobia and the violence around it was a joint media release with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, which I'd like to read a portion of. The statement said, the Nelson Mandela and Ahmed Kathrada Foundations strongly condemn the spate of attacks in KwaZulu-Natal against those perceived to be foreigners. This is the latest manifestation of a phenomenon which has been troubling our democracy for a long time. We welcome the intervention by our President and other senior leaders and call on all levels of leadership to address the challenge as a priority. Now, for too long, South Africans in leadership positions have either ignored the crisis or stoked the fires of hatred. We call on all South Africans to take responsibility for embracing the hospitality that defines our democratic order and to work together to find solutions to a problem which is destroying lives and bringing South Africa shame internationally. We urge South Africans in the lead up to the Africa Day on May 25 to pledge to eradicate xenophobia. Only in this way can we truly commemorate the founding date of the Organization of African Unity, later the African Union. Xenophobia is an expression of a terrible failure of memory by South Africans. We are forgetting the long years of struggle against ethnic and related forms of identity mobilization. We are forgetting the support given by the peoples of the African continent to the struggle against apartheid. And we are forgetting the legacies of liberation stalwarts such as Nelson Mandela and Ahmed Kathrada. In 1995, Nelson Mandela addressed a gathering in Alexandra, and this is what he said. During the years I lived here, the people of Alexandra ignored tribal and ethnic distinctions. Instead of being Xhosas or Sutus or Zulus or Shangans, we are all Alexandrians. We were one people, and we undermined the distinctions that the apartheid government tried so hard to impose. It saddens and angers me to see the rising hatred of foreigners. End of quote. And this was a time, as you can see, of clear speaking leadership. More recently, at Nelson Mandela's funeral, Ahmed Kathrada said, "It is up to the present and next generations to take up the cudgels where you," meaning Madiba, "have left off. It is up to them through service to deepen our democracy, entrench and defend our constitution, eradicate poverty, eliminate inequality, fight corruption, and serve always with compassion, respect, integrity, and tolerance. Above all, they must build our nation or break down the barriers that still divide us. Xenophobia, racism, and sexism must be fought with tenacity, wisdom, and enlightenment. Anything that defines someone else as the other has to go. Tolerance and understanding must flourish and grow." Thus said Ahmed Kathrada at his comrade's funeral. The foundation is committed to contributing to finding sustainable solutions to this scourge, working in particular with what we believe we do reasonably well, which is host dialogues that get different people involved in these problems to apply their minds rigorously and robustly, but with care and sensitivity and the sense of solidarity in the search for sustainable solutions. And thus, then, we co-hosted with the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation the Dialogue Forum on Xenophobia, which took place this whole day, and Sillo has made some references to it. It was quite speaking personally, a very moving, challenging event with a variety of opinions being expressed, and it was heartening to hear some of the speakers saying it was good to be that this dialogue is happening at this foundation, which they regard as a safe space for the most difficult discussions and conversations to take place. The idea of the safe space is very valuable to the foundation, that we would like that work hard to ensure that everyone who looks upon the foundation sees an institution that they can trust and which deals with these matters in a considered, straightforward, principled, and caring manner. So the dialogue pushed everyone who was in there, opened up new ideas, new perspectives of understanding, but also building the sense of solidarity that many of us feel is tottering and is on the verge of being lost. And always, therefore, the opportunity to come together and think about these things is itself an affirmation in nation building. It works against the tendency for us to have short memories where we can hardly remember the international solidarity which played a key role in ending apartheid. We hardly remember often the hospitality given South Africans by the frontline states during the era of struggle. We have forgotten that the frontline states endured in what they endured in that era. I have many of us do a personal memory of living 20 years in another country and being welcomed. In that way, Lesotho became to me a second country. So nothing would traumatize me more than a conflict between South Africa and Lesotho. And the sense that in that country, it took a decision a long time ago to say, we regard ourselves as a nation of refugees, because everyone who has been here, running away from the Shagan wars and other conflicts in Southern Africa at the time, came there and formed this nation, which is why, having lived in Lesotho for 20 years, I never had the experience of living in a refugee camp because of the policy taken by the people of Lesotho, that people running away from other countries will live among us, in peace. But this did not stop, of course, the South African Defense Force when people were attacked and South Africans in there and killed in their sleep. But the fact that the people of Lesotho, it did not happen in some refugee camp somewhere. For many Basotho, it happened next door, to their families, and so on. So the people of Lesotho and others around the subcontinent of Southern Africa lived with the struggle. They shared it with us. They saw it, they smelled it, and they drank it with all of us. And it is not a memory easy to forget, besides the fact that one met a wife there and all the children were born there and everything. So one was a beneficiary of all this hospitality, and it's an experience, a life-affirming experience, never to be forgotten. The exhibition on the front line is a work of memory, difficult memory, painful memory, but necessary memory. The foundation is ever so grateful to Simon and Ingrid for drawing on their own frontline experience in the 1980s to create this powerful work. And we trust that it will contribute to reminding South Africans of what we owe to the peoples of the countries around us, and that in the final analysis, SADC ceases to become something we talk about in policies, that we actually see people moving across the borders freely and growing together into a formidable region of not only in Africa, but in the world. So thank you very much. We look forward to the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. I'd like to, at this point, invite Simon Bright and Ingrid Sinclair to come and say a few words, the curators of the exhibition.
Well, there's lots of you. This is very exciting. Thank you to everybody here at the Foundation for taking the risk on us. We've seen the DVD, which is part of the exhibition. In some ways, I'd say that there's a kind of difference between the DVD and the stills exhibition. And the DVD, in some ways, is more about the terrible and negative sides and the war sides. The exhibition focuses much more on the people. And I've always placed I've always placed people at the heart of my work, and I've often used my work to look at the people of slender means and of little choice, whose voices very seldom get heard. But it's those people who bear the weight of political decisions. Those are the people who, on behalf of their leaders, struggle to survive, suffer deprivation, die. And they're also the people who carry out the resistance and who sometimes defeat their oppressors. I want to say something quickly about photographs, still photographs. They're very powerful because they're evidence of something that actually happened. Although words explain why and how, it's the pictures that can reach out and touch us. Someone, as the photographs there show, someone lying dead of wounds is just that, regardless of which side they were on. A still photo takes us straight to that life which was cut off and stays there. It doesn't numb us by moving quickly on to the next picture. So when I was asked to curate this exhibition, I realized that most South Africans may not have known what happened in the frontline states in those years leading up to the end of apartheid. In Angola, Botswana, Lesotho, Mozambique, Tanzania, Zambia and Zimbabwe, the frontline states who worked together to help their brothers and sisters suffering in South Africa. What I guess South Africans did know was that the frontline states sheltered so-called terrorists, giving them bases where they could train and from which they could launch attacks into South Africa. Obviously, the South African army was going to try and destroy those bases. That was the risk taken by the host countries and by the freedom fighters. Such raids were horrific, as we just heard in Lesotho, and killed brave South Africans and innocent people who were not South Africans around them. Some of the photos here in the exhibition that I've chosen show the aftermath of those attacks. Most South Africans also knew that the SADF was conscripting young men for military service in Namibia and Angola. So it was clear there was some kind of war going on to defend South Africa against encroaching communism. But I lived in Zimbabwe and worked across the region. Simon and I both worked together. I saw things from a frontline point of view. And I'm telling a story that goes beyond raids on South African opposition bases and collateral damage, or the struggle to keep communism out of South Africa. I'm telling the story of an onslaught against whole countries that were invaded, occupied, destabilized, millions of refugees, hundreds of thousands of people killed, countries impoverished and corrupted by the destruction of vital resources, long drawn-out wars, all caused by apartheid South Africa. So I also chose photographs that show the impact of that South African onslaught, country by country, on the peoples of the frontline states, and rallying round their leaders' political decisions, their resilience, their fight back, their contribution to victory, and their total opposition to apartheid. As you go around this exhibition, maybe not tonight, but maybe another time, I hope you'll go slowly and really look into each photograph. One of them you'll see is an Angolan village bombed by South Africa. There's a feeling of total emptiness. Just a few clay pots, some burnt posts, part of a wall. And I hope it'll lead you to imagine what that would be like, to lose everything you ever had. And nearby is a lovely portrait of a shy, young woman Angolan soldier. She may be shy, but she's fighting back. This exhibition takes as its focus the people of the frontline states, many of whom have come to work in South Africa and who have experienced extreme xenophobic violence. And I hope it will suggest to those who see it that instead of offering violence, they should be saying thank you. But it also has a broader function. I hope this exhibition will reach people in government and schools and townships, because the photographs I've chosen are a plea not only for generosity, but also for solidarity across all borders. And they are a plea for peace, a cry against division and war, a cry against violence. I hope that these photos will speak to all who look at them about the value of human life everywhere. Madiba said, "We thank the world community, for their great contribution to the anti-apartheid struggle. Without your support, our struggle would not have reached this advanced stage. The sacrifice of the frontline states will be remembered by South Africans forever. This exhibition is a reminder."
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, friends and comrades, I'd like to give some historical background to the exhibition and take you back to the 1980s when the South African Defence Force was invading Angola for the second, or was it the third time, when apartheid regime was training and supplying Renamo to wreak bloody civil war throughout Mozambique. And Corridors of Freedom was the first piece of work that we made about the frontline states' resistance. And it focused on the transport routes. It was a documentary made with the crew that you see in the photograph outside on the panel in the exhibition. A wonderful motley crew consisting of 3 Mozambicans, one of whom is in the room here today. Gabriel Mondlane, where are you? Hey, viva! Obrigado, Mozambique! A Zimbabwean, a Tanzanian, 2 Angolans, and a young woman from Bristol, United Kingdom, called Ingrid Sinclair. It was my first film. It was 16mm those days. Remember them? Many of you don't. Niagara tape recorder, Arriflex. And I learnt a tremendous amount about both filmmaking, about solidarity, and about the power of the collective will through our work as a film crew. What you have to remember is that Angola and Mozambique, in those early years of the 1980s, had been independent since 1975, and they had filmmakers who had many years of making these kind of war films. And they were my instructors. The challenges of making Corridors and other frontline films were emblematic of the situation in the region at the time. People like Gabriel Mondlane from Mozambique, he's very well familiar with being ambushed on a train and keeping the camera rolling. Surviving and filming a Renamo ambush, being targeted by South African artillery as we crossed the River Quito in Angola, we brought the news in May 1988 to London that the Angolans had captured and destroyed the South African tanks at the Battle of Cuitcanaval. And we were able to do this precisely because we were Southern Africans of all colors and many nationalities, and we were working together purposefully, to echo the words of the chairman of the Mandela Foundation. But we were just a small part of a network of media workers in the region and internationally who were combating a powerful and very well-funded apartheid propaganda machine that reached all over the world. Other activist producers were video news services in South Africa. There was Jimmy Matthews. Jimmy, you here? There was the Institut Nacional de Cinema in Mozambique. There was the Opção program on Angolan TV. Photographers from Zimbabwe, Holland, and filmmakers in Swaziland and Lesotho. They were informal networks. We weren't kind of like linked as an organization in any way, but we worked together. So what's the point of this exhibition, which recounts that and reminds us of that violent history of the attacks on the frontline states and the fearful war and the destabilization that came to those countries neighboring South Africa. Firstly, I want to remember and congratulate photographers like John Liebenberg. Are you here, John? Yeah. Working in Namibia, and Ricardo, the late Ricardo Rangel in Mozambique, Per Sandum from Sweden, and the many Dutchmen that you will see credited on the walls of this exhibition, and the filmmakers from the frontline states like the late Carlos Enriquez, without whom I would never have got to Angola, and whose outstanding war footage you saw in the exhibition DVD. I also want to bring back to memory the solidarity network of media workers who countered South African propaganda to the world. As our information from the frontline states in South Africa gathered momentum, it signaled to the international crews that apartheid was not going to succeed and helped to trigger the financial sanctions that were so vital in bringing it down. Apartheid was overthrown by many factors, but especially at this time of xenophobia, it's appropriate to remember the solidarity of the frontline states, and above all in the center of memory. I grew up in Rhodesia in the 1960s, and it was quite a xenophobic place. We even despised South Africans, and Portuguese Mozambicans were beneath contempt. But I discovered after the 1980s in Southern Africa inspiration and enormous creative achievement by working with Angolans, Mozambicans, Tanzanians, and South Africans. We could have not done the work that we did without them. And so I wish that the region of Southern Africa could fulfill the potential it showed when it overthrew apartheid. It was a collective effort, and I really believe that it's a question of attitudes and values, determination, and of course the management of economics and production that's going to bring about the change. We actually live in such an exciting region, culturally diverse. Let's celebrate that diversity, and let's build on its strengths, and let's learn from each other. I mean, this is how, as you say, Southern Africa is going to become great. Ingrid and I really appreciate the great support that we've had and the honor from the Mandela Center of Memory of being invited to curate this exhibition, and it has enabled us to travel back in time, meeting old friends, making new friends, and bringing back to memory a past and above all the values and a time that ideology have buried. So thanks very much to Celo, Lucia, Vern, Pro Group, in fact the whole team, for reminding us that solidarity was not left behind in the 20th century and is alive and thrives in this center today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Simon and Ingrid. Thank you very much to both of you. I remember that day when you came to the office, and today it's good to see this work. I'd like to now call on someone who needs no introduction really to all of us. He was the former Speaker of our Parliament, and I'd like to ask Ntate Sisulu to come and speak to us.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Chairperson of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, my friend, my comrade, my fellow freedom fighter, Mamgrasa. Good evening to you all. It's a great pleasure to be here tonight. When Silo sent me a note and said, I've got 4 minutes speaking time, I jumped at that opportunity because, as you know, in my other life, my previous life, I was a speaker, and speakers don't speak. They just allocate time to everybody else to speak. And I'm giving time to speak. I said, well, you know, this is a welcome change. But of course, it's very good to be here because this is a fitting tribute to the frontline states. As we mark and celebrate just over 20 years of our freedom and democracy, we want to look back and say, we are here today because we were there yesterday. We are here today because of the support we received from all the frontline states and from everybody all over the world. Now, we should look back at the paths that we have traversed as a people and as a nation, and of course, in that process, paid tribute to the role that our neighboring countries supported us in the struggle for freedom. President Oliver Tambo, who I had the honor and pleasure of staying with and working with in exile, spoke in a conference in solidarity with the frontline states in Lisbon. And he said, quote him, "We have come here," he said, "to express our solidarity with the countries who, because of their geographic location and principled stand, are placed in the front line of the struggle against the inhumane and racist apartheid regime in South Africa. They were placed there by history to be on the front line in the struggle for freedom." We meet continued President Tambo also because in that southern region, Southern African region of Africa, the extent of the suffering, depth, and disintegration of millions of our people by the regime of apartheid remains a problem, not just for ourselves as the region, but for the whole world. A number of us who left the country, I left the country after my release from detention. I was about 18 years when I was detained with my mother because my father was underground and they were looking for him and looking for the leaders of the ANC. So my detention had nothing to do with him, it had everything to do with the vindictiveness of the system. And after my father and the leaders were arrested, Lily's Leaf, there was a big delegation of Afrikaner police to my cell. I was quite surprised. I know that they did like me, but I didn't know they liked me that much. And they said to me, "We've got good news for you. We have arrested your father." And 2 days later, I was released. My mom was released a day later. So the family decided, the matriarch of the family decided, I didn't, my mom, that you have to leave the country, my son. And she said, "Tomorrow." I just got myself a young girlfriend. There was no chance to say goodbye. I just had to leave. And the truth of the matter is, of course, I didn't know where we were going. And the person who was going to take us out of the country was in Park Station waiting for me. I didn't know him. And I thought, since he didn't know me, I didn't know him, I might just slip and go back home. As I was about to board the train, he was just right behind me. He said, "I've been waiting for you." So I had no choice but to join him. And then I was sent into exile with a few other cadres of Mkhonto Wesizwe. The first port of call was Botswana. It was then Tshwanaland, I think it was. And we were in a refugee camp. The thing about it was that there were people from Namibia, from Zimbabwe, from everywhere. And of course, all of us were there, young freedom fighters. Us to train for MK, others for, the freedom fighters from Zimbabwe, from Namibia, from everywhere. One thing we had in common was that we had songs together. And we had sometimes we ate together. And the food was not too great, but not too bad. We had one meal a day, and it was, a big plate of pap and some beans. On Sundays was the best. We had a plate of beans and a bit of pap, but hey, that was better than nothing. So we were waiting to go and join the Liberation Army. And as we were waiting, one day we saw a plane landing at the airstrip, and we were so excited, And we knew that, no, the ANC had delivered on its promise. We were going to be taken for military training. So we couldn't sleep that night. At around about 4 o'clock in the morning, there was a big bang, and the plane was bent. It exploded. So the first thing was, of course, we're very angry, upset. But one gentleman was very realistic, said, hey, it's better it's banned on the ground than in the air. And we thought, hey, hey, there's some wisdom in that. So we then went for military training. I went to Russia, and others went to different places. But of course, one of the things that struck me then, and still struck me today, is that during the difficult days when we're fighting for freedom, we're all freedom fighters from different countries, spoke different languages, and lived in different countries. I lived in 6 countries in Southern Africa. I lived in those countries because, A, they gave me accommodation. They gave me space to do things I wanted to do. They gave me warmth and friendship. And they were there for us, and we were there for them. We also understood that we being with them was a threat to them because the regime would come, and they did come, to bomb us. They massacred people in different parts of the region. We remember the Matola massacres. We remember the massacres in Maseru. We remember the bombings in Botswana, the raids in Botswana. We remember all the parcel bombs that were sent to different parts of the region, of Southern African region. They killed Tiro in a parcel bomb in Botswana. And a few days later, a similar parcel bomb came to our offices in the Liberation Center. We were in that center, and the chief representative opened the parcel, and we said, don't open it. He did open it. He died on the spot. I nearly died, and even today, my left ear, the eardrum is damaged. And they destroyed the whole Liberation Center. So wherever we were, we knew that the enemy was going to look for us and try and find us. But we also knew that we were home, away from home, in every part of the region. We were home, away from home. When things were bad, sometimes the neighbors came and said, you can come and sleep in our house tonight. Don't sleep in that house because they know your house. And that's how they also saved us. So we are where we are today, free at last, because they showed solidarity with us. They didn't call us names, and of course we were happy to be part of the big solidarity movement. I know for a fact that the apartheid regime destroyed the economy of the region. I went to see the destruction in all the different parts of the region where they destroyed the economy. Being an economist, I felt that they were not just wanting to kill, but to destroy the future. Destroying the economy, they wanted to destroy the future. Now, what we also did in the frontline states was we were given space to do many things. We started a school in Tanzania called Mazimbu. And the great thing about this Mazimbu, it brought children from Southern Africa, from South Africa. You also had young kids from Sweden, etc., who also studied in Mazimbu. And it was interesting to hear this young, small boy, must have been 3 or 4, a Swedish boy speaking very good Zulu, better than my Zulu. I mean, that's how children are. They live together, spend time together. But the Tanzanians were absolutely warm to us, and they were wonderful. They supported us in everything, and they gave us space to build one of the best schools in Southern Africa. When we left Mazimbu, when we left Tanzania, that school had become almost a university. We were proud to hand it over to the Tanzanians and say, thank you, this is now your university. And we've been there, and it's a wonderful school with wonderful memories. So, in the destruction that the apartheid caused all over the region, one thing remained is that the people of the region remained solid in their support for our struggle. They, the regime, also went to the south of Angola, newly liberated Angola, who fought so hard for their freedom. and occupied parts of it, and the people of the region and our people, also our own soldiers who came, were there to fight and defend the revolution of Angola. With the help of the Cubans, there was a turning point at Kuto Carnavale. Everybody will remember that turning point. It was the first time that South Africa was defeated in a battle. And the first time they realized that they now had to sit down and think properly about the future of the country. So in talking about the frontline states, which later, of course, became the SADC countries, we want to take this opportunity to thank them and thank everybody who made it possible for us to be where we are today. The frontline states will always remain in our memories, fond memories about the home we had away from home, the warmth we received from everybody, and most important, they gave us food, they gave us shelter, they gave us education. And I want to express his thanks too. When my father, after being released, he spent some time, and he was invited to visit Mozambique. And he went to Mozambique as a guest of the government of Mozambique, met Frelimo. They had wonderful discussions. My father's Portuguese is slightly worse than mine, mine is non-existent, but they understood each other. President of Mozambique and everybody. And one of the things that struck me was that freedom fighters everywhere. You don't need the extra language. It's simply the language of understanding, the language of friendship, of a shared vision, a common vision of the future, and what is it that you want to do together. And everywhere we went with my dad and my mom, we were met with warmth in Zambia, everywhere. My parents also came to Zimbabwe, visited us in Zimbabwe. My wife, who never called me Kwere Kwere, is Zimbabwean. And so I had a home in Zimbabwe. My kids were born in Zimbabwe. And they became Zimbabweans. But the Zimbabweans were very nice to me. They said, you remain stateless. These will be taken by us. So I understood. But one of the things that we also understood was that there was those bonds of friendship, not just family, everything. It was bonds of friendship. And I said, before, we are here because they were there for us. And we'd like to thank the frontline states, before you give me the note, and would like to ask that this thing should not be just, by accident. I think it should be part of that process of also teaching the children at school our history. Our history is a history, a collective history. Everywhere we went, we were supported by the anti-apartheid movement in Holland, everywhere. It was a momentous movement, and we benefited from all the support we got from everybody. So perhaps one of the things that you might want to do is to consider inviting the ministers of education and looking at changing the curriculum to include SADC and the frontline states as part of our history, part of the curriculum.
Thank you so much. You stopped right as I was about to say honorable member. And then you stopped. But before I invite our keynote speaker for tonight, I thought I should just say that tonight is particularly special because outside, as I walked outside, I saw someone I last saw about 10 years ago, and the last time I saw him, I decided to break free from him because he was giving me bad advice every time. He was a teacher, a former teacher at Somafco. It's Patrick Nchaulani. Are you here somewhere? I think he's right there. And he was outside with about 6 of his former colleagues who were teachers at Somafco. So there's a lot of Somafco teachers here. And the reason I mentioned him specifically, Prof, is that had I stayed with him, I wouldn't be here tonight. So, because he was the man who kept telling me that you can sue government also. So I then had to break free from him. So let me now introduce to you tonight's keynote speaker. I know she frowns at the idea of a keynote speech, but your remarks, Mom, is that good enough? Okay. Mom is going to give us her remarks. Mom Grasa Machel, please come and give us your remarks.
It's 8 o'clock now? Okay. Good evening. I agreed to come and share my little bit of history many months ago, and I was quite excited about it. Then these recent incidents in the country came, and I have to confess I'm deeply disturbed. So I don't have the same excitement like when I accepted to make my remarks. I confess I am a disturbed citizen of Southern Africa. I have had to, in my 20s, early 20s, I had to leave Mozambique for Portugal. I was part of clandestine cell in Portugal. I had been instructed to do work there. One of the young men who was part of our cell was a Mozambican, white Mozambican. I'll emphasize that because he was in what they called at the time High Strategic Studies Institute, where they were training those who would become administrators, public servants of the system, but being sent to Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau at the time. So he could literally get the plans of lessons which were given by the generals who were coming from the front, military fronts, to prepare these young people who are going to run the provinces and districts in Mozambique, so they should know what is the strategy, the military strategy. So we could have all those lessons, at least the plan of lessons, to send them to Frelium. It was quite interesting, very risky, but interesting. I went there, I was mostly a Mozambican. I became conscious of my strong connections with the so-called, at the time, Portuguese-speaking colonies, Angola, Guinea-Bissau, and ourselves, Mozambicans, Cape Verde, and we became a family. So my understanding of being more than Mozambican was practical. I have to say some of my best friends until today are Angolans and Cape Verdeans. Then I had to leave because we made a few mistakes and we were at risk of being arrested. So I went to London as if I was going to a holiday, and then from London, Switzerland, I ended up in Dar es Salaam. Why I'm saying this is to say that my opening up to be more than Mozambican was part of a process where first I became conscious of being belonging to the countries which were fighting the Portuguese. Then I get to Dar es Salaam. That's when directly I interacted with people from the ANC, from SWAPO, from, at the time, there was no ZANU because we're based in Lusaka. So some of my colleagues, not me, they really trained and they learned how to become soldiers together with those, because Tanzania gave a camp to all liberation movements, regardless of what language you speak or where you come from. So to say again that the bond amongst the liberation freedom fighters, it was developed in that thing of living together, training together, and as Max was saying, singing together. And some of them until today, they have that relationship of a brother of my blood, because they were prepared to say, you are going here, you're going there, I'll die for you and you can die for me. And this thing of we as citizens of this region is not an intellectual option. It is a life experience which became part of our DNA. It is today a DNA. A few days when I was talking to the Sithole Memorial Service, I said, I'm South African, I'm Zimbabwean, I am Mozambican, I am Zambian, and of course I added Malawi because of the events here. But I want us to say, to remember that solidarity comes from the same kind of experience. We have to go through it. If you don't, it becomes theoretical. And it's difficult. I mean, I really want to be honest and fair also to young people who did not live those days. They find it difficult sometimes to understand what we're talking about. For us, it's memory. For them, it's not memory. They were not even born. We simply have not told them. We didn't teach them. We didn't inform them. So we are asking for solidarity with a case which is not part of their experience. So it becomes very difficult to understand. Let me come now to our story today, and this is what I'm going really to focus on. South Africa today has about 56 million people, isn't it? Yeah. And South Africans are developing a sense of guilt that, now we are ill-treating foreigners in our country while we have been very well received wherever we have been. I want to say to you, don't feel guilty, but take responsibility. It's a different thing. Don't feel guilty, but take responsibility. And I'll use my half of being South African to say, let us take responsibility for what is happening. But guilty, I don't know what it helps. You know who is attacking foreigners here? Those who are taking foreigners and they have killed them, etc., etc., are people who are struggling for survival themselves. They have been pushed to the limit. It's not the 56 million of people. They are probably 100,000 of them, if they are. But those people have been pushed to the limit. And when a human being is pushed to the limit, can go beyond the sense of being human and simply fight for survival. You know the stories of people who becomes almost cannibals when they don't have any other thing to eat? You know, huh? I was told a story of a hostel here in Johannesburg, which was meant for 3,000 people. And now it has 15,000 people. All of them, they're unemployed. but they live in that hostel. Down the road, we cross the road, there are shops, most of them owned by Nigerians. And these Nigerians are doing business. And you know that they are very good entrepreneurs. I mean, they can transform anything into successful business. So these people living in these hostels, they see this happening. I want to say, these are the people who are angry. You hear me? These are the people who are angry. In a hostel, 20 years after freedom, they are still living in a hostel. They are there, I don't know how many times than what it was expected, and they are unemployed, but they see successful people who are in front of them, and these people happen to be foreigners. You and I, can you put yourself in their skin? These people in this hostel, how do they feel? I'm not justifying them, and I'll explain myself why I'm bringing this example. You know, the other thing I want to say, there are here something like 4 million of Zimbabweans who came to this country looking for opportunities of survival. 4 million. But if you include the Mozambicans, the Nigerians, the DRCs, and all those who are here, maybe there are about 5 million of us who are living in South Africa in recent times. Why are we coming here? Why are we coming? We are looking for opportunities, right? Simple opportunity to survive. You know how this Lesotho was killed? He came from Mozambique and he was selling cigarettes and airtime stuff. You see what I'm trying to say? He left Mozambique, he has 2 wives, come to South Africa to sell cigarettes and airtime. Now let me go to serious stuff. When Max and I, for instance, who belong to the generation which had to go to exile, we left our countries because we had a dream. And we had been pushed to the limit that there was no way our dream could materialize if we had not to take 1, courage, 2, risk, 3, to be prepared to die. Whatever would happen, we made a choice that there was no other chance for us because we could not live under the system which was oppressing us. So we knew that we would live, as he was telling his story in detail, to leave your family, to leave whatever you are familiar with as your environment. You break with it. And you say, I'll embrace the unknown. But the unknown, uncertain, I'll take the risk because there is a big dream, much bigger than myself, which represents the people I'm part of, and I'm prepared to take the risk, and I'm prepared to die. We had a very good cause, very good reasons. And then we grew to embrace and to understand that our countries in this region were so intertwined that there's no Mozambique without South Africa. There's no Zimbabwe without Zambia. There is no Swazi without Mozambique, any one of us. Our leaders when they established these frontline states, it was not just a commodity. It because there was no point in which any of the states which were free, our freedom could not consolidate if, in Mozambique in this case, could not consolidate if Zimbabwe was not free, if South Africa was not free. There was no choice. So when they led our people to say, our freedom is meaningless if Zimbabwe and South Africa are not free, it is the same kind of feeling with Julius Nyerere and Kenneth Kaunda when they took the responsibility to embrace all the liberation movements in their countries, because Tanzania would not be free without the other countries in the region, and Zambia could not. And they divided responsibilities. You are going to embrace this, we will work together. Until then, the club grew to frontline states when they became free. But let's remember, it was Julius Nyerere and Kenneth Kaunda who opened their countries immediately after independence then to embrace everybody. But they had a very big understanding of who we are and how we are linked by blood. You have to have something which is bigger than you to believe in, to live for, to be prepared to give your life, for you then to get to that understanding. But we were pushed to the limit, because maybe we could have negotiated, but there was no choice of negotiations. We were pushed to the limit. What I'm trying to say is that those 5 million of foreigners who are in South Africa are being pushed to the limit to come here. That's why they come to sell cigarettes. That's why some of them, they come to open this small business. The Somalis, the Ethiopians, etc., etc. Why? Because we, the liberation movement, in power now, we lost the dream. We lost the vision. And because of that, we are pushing our people out, and they are going back and forth. And because now there is social media, there's TV, they see the lights of Johannesburg, the lights of Durban, the lights of Cape Town, they believe that here opportunities are limitless. Because TV doesn't show Alexander. TV doesn't show, the suffering of the millions of South Africans who are, they don't show the hostel we're talking about. So when they come here, they are attracted by the lights of Johannesburg, the lights of Cape Town, the lights of of Durban. Because their leaders, they lost the dream and the vision which we developed during those years of struggle, the days of frontline. Now, I want to make something which may, a remark which may sound forcing. But I think that idea of taking the courage to live, taking the risk, and to be prepared in the borders, to be shot by the police. For them, those who are coming here, it's just for the opportunity to sell cigarettes. While for us, it was a much bigger dream. But the motivation of saying, I have no choice, is the same. You hear me? You may disagree. But the motivation to say, I have no choice, is the same. The big dream is completely different. They are not coming here because of a big dream. It is because of the opportunity to sell cigarettes. Why I'm saying this? South Africans are developing this sense of guilt. Mozambicans are extremely angry because in 2008, the symbol of xenophobia was a Mozambican who was burned alive. Then in 2010, it was not xenophobia, but they saw a Mozambican being dragged until he went to a police station and he died there. But he is Mozambican, okay? And now, Sitole, whether it's Sitole or he's Jusias, whatever he is, but he is Mozambican. Now we say, well, no, he was selling cigarettes. But the image and the symbol of xenophobia in 2015 is a Mozambican. So people are extremely angry in that country. Zimbabweans are also extremely angry against South Africans. Zambians, everybody is very angry. And I'm saying, if we continue like this, some feel guilty, others are angry. We are angry against each other. We are not going to get it. We have to recognize what is happening here. Our leadership has betrayed the dream. All of them. They betrayed the dream. They are not showing us the leadership. They don't have the big dream to motivate all of us to look up to something bigger than any one of us. And because that thing bigger than any one of us doesn't exist, people will keep moving up and down in these different borders just for survival. Some to work in a farm, others to sell cigarettes, as we said, another one to open the little shop. And those who we can call whatever they are, it's not us here in this room. It's not those who are in our level. Because we have a job. We have a house. We are treated if we are sick. We can't send our children to school. The problem is not us. The problem is the dream has failed the millions. And that's why it is the millions down there who are burning each other, who are killing each other, who are showing these signals of hatred. But the hatred in this country, it started long ago. It was against the police. It was against the councillors. It was what we see, huh? Now it is targeting. It is targeting foreigners. But you know, if you were to decide that all foreigners in South Africa should go away, you know they would be angry against who? Against South Africans themselves. That is the problem we have. And we need to look at that. Why people are so angry. Even this hatred. They hate it. The first instance is to hating foreigners. But they hate the conditions in which they are living. They hate the conditions in which they are living. And they are prepared to put their foot on anyone to see whether they can survive, even to become a cannibal. That's the example I gave at the beginning. So the issue here really is, how do you explain to people in those conditions that Mozambique, Zambia, Angola, they were very much in solidarity with us? So what? You know what they have told me? They said, but you tell us about our leaders and our cadres who were, how many were they in each of these countries where they were living? Were they opening these shops really? Where they don't employ South Africans? They employ among, you see the logic of what we are talking about here, for people who are absolutely destitute, it doesn't work. That logic is not going to work. So as we remember what the frontline were and how they played, I'm coming now to my point, we have to reinvent the dream. We need to reinvent the dream. It's the dream, but which has to be very, very clear, a dream in which people will feel they are prepared to join, they are prepared to give their lives for. That's the dream which can mobilize people of Southern Africa. And my question now, who reinvents the dream? Who leads? Who reinvents the dream and who leads? And how are we going to get out of this? I have a suggestion. People in this room have lived those glorious years of solidarity. What you are saying, you know, my ministry, I was Minister of Education at the time. Just the other side of the road, in one afternoon, there's a huge boom. I'm in the ministry. And we all came in to find out what happened. South African spies and commandos had identified a South African family of one of our comrades from South Africa who actually belonged to the intelligence. So he was living in a building, you know, like this, in a third floor. You get to third floor, there's what you say left and right, okay? He lived in third floor left. But the South African police and the killer, he made a mistake. Instead of bombing third floor left, he bombed third floor right. So this side was a Mozambican family, and this side was a South African family. Fortunately, at that time, the South African family was not there. So they were not killed. But they killed 3 people in a Mozambican family because they thought they were South Africans. What I'm trying to say here is, you know, those days, this kind of incidents, they built such kind of solidarity among us that it didn't matter. It didn't matter they killed a Mozambican family. The issue was how the South Africans succeeded to come, enter Maputo, and kill. And we, as a Frelimo in government, we were not able to prevent it. And we took that responsibility. We took that responsibility. It was not the issue whether they are South Africans. How did they manage to do this? In 1981, January, South African Defense Forces, they sent a commando to southern Mozambique. They painted them to look like they were black people, but they were white, completely black. And they entered, and then they attacked. It's the famous speech which Samora Machel, holding the hand of Oliver Tambo, he said, "We are 35 million. I don't know whether some of you know of this. Saying, at that time, Mozambique was like maybe less than 10 million people at that time. And it was like the oppressed people of South Africa, which majority are black, and us in Mozambique, we were 35 million according to that time. We were prepared, all of us, 35 million, to march against apartheid. And he said, the day of freedom will come when children of South Africa can walk hand in hand, black and white, Indians, to go to school together. That's what we are prepared to pay as a 35 million. We don't have that dream. For people to feel they are prepared to do anything, even what we are saying, to embrace the 5 million who are here, because they have a common cause. Where is the dream? Where is the vision? Why people have to sacrifice for what? So my view is that people of memory, people of culture, help us to reinvent the dream and offer that dream to our children. Go to children now and tell them that it was important because Julius Nyerere, because of Samora Machel, because Agustin Net. They will look at you and say, so what? What does it have to do with me today? You have to connect our heroes and our leaders with something which is meaningful and tangible to them today. Then it will make sense. That's when history makes sense. When the conditions in which we are living do not relate to anything bigger than any one of us, then you are not going to connect the history with the realities of today. That solidarity can be built just out of words. We need to reinvent the dream. So, Selo, I think one of the things you have to do to revive this memory of ours is really to, I know there are people from Mozambique here, from Angola, etc., from all the region. This kind of solidarity works. Maybe the dialogue in reinventing the dream, we have to do it as a region. If South Africa, the Center of Memory calls, I don't know how many dialogues with South Africans alone, it won't work. And we'll continue to think that we are particularly, no, South Africans don't hate anyone. I can tell you, Madiba loved me so much. He is a South African. No, South Africans don't hate other people as such. It's the conditions in which they are living, those who are killing. As I said, this is not happening in public service. It doesn't happen. No. They are killing, it's there. Look exactly where, it's in Alexander. And look in which townships it happened in Durban. That's where the conflict is. And as I'm saying, they will leave all the foreigners, but those people who are living in those conditions, they will continue to hate each other. They will continue to kill each other. Reinventing the dream. But we reinvent it together as a region. So please call people from different countries. Let us have this debate. Yes, we have to build it on the base of our common history, of the oppression we have gone through together. But how did we organize ourselves, to bring down that huge machinery of apartheid together? If we're able to do that, hey, for us to have food, for us to have clean water, to have house, those who are in those conditions, they don't go out and kill each other simply because they said you are taking a job. They don't do that. Those people are desperate. They have been pushed to the limit. So I changed completely, what I had thought of talking about, because I thought, even if I tell you how Mozambique really embraced, I know so many South Africans. They sat at my table. It's not like I know them only. They are my brothers. They would come and sit and eat at my table. Zimbabweans. When I say I'm Zimbabwean or I'm Zambian, I have families in Zambia where I pick up the phone, just to pick up the phone and talk to them. I have a home in any of these countries. But it was built on a certain base. It doesn't happen theoretically. So we need to look at the realities of today and say, how do we rebuild the dream? And remembering that it comes from sharing a vision. It comes from sharing a bigger cause, bigger than ourselves. And we will then, on the shoulders of those, find a way of uniting our people. Otherwise, you'll see what happened. You see, Mugabe is very clever. You know what he said? Oh, no, we support South Africa. And then the minister came here and said, we thank you, South Africa, for taking care of us. Why 4 million Zimbabweans did leave Zimbabwe? And then you come and say, thank you for hosting them. But that's why I'm saying we have to reinvent the dream together with Zimbabweans, with Mozambicans, with Zambians, with everybody. And to be able then to create, now I want to finalize, another front line. And the front line now, it's not our leaders. This leadership is not going to have to become the front line. The front line now, it's you people. That's the front line. It's those who can articulate this, those who can show. I mean, it's a video, it's a film, it's a theater, it's a book. You are the front line to reinvent the dream. And you are the front line to mobilize our people to show that these borders, which he inherited, have no significance at all. So, front line, you people, and thank you. Take up the challenge of you are the dream.
Thank you very much, Mama Shell. As we draw to end this tonight's program, I thought I should just comment on and reflect on your reflections, both your reflections. To say that you're reminding us the dialogue that has no sympathetic ear is no dialogue at all. That you're saying to us we need to create a new narrative, but in the process of creating this narrative, that we not forget and dump what is core to our own identity as a nation and as a continent. As the chair of SANEF earlier on said, that maybe as we reimagined ourselves as a nation, we dumped what could have helped build a dream that Mom was talking about. That Madiba had an idea when he started RDP, that there was good reason to continue with Masakane. Do you remember Masakane? That there might have been good reason to start Batopele. And that there was good reason also to say we are building a nation. That nation building is core. What Bergilda says is now nation formation. But I also say that you helped us even name and say the unsayable. And we need to be saying what's happening in Burundi is also killing the dream. We cannot be talking tonight about the dream when there's a president who demands a third term, despite his own people dying today. So it's not difficult to imagine that tomorrow we'll have Burundi in South Africa, running away from that is being destroyed in Burundi. And that you both remind us that we will be judged highly, very, very harshly by what we do in peacetime. That we should not take the lull that's there now and relax, but that the job that needs to be done during peacetime, when it's quiet. That we need to reignite the values and the value of life also. That we take responsibility, but we take responsibility not for the ghosts of the past only, those who died that we saw here, but we take responsibility for the ghosts of the future, those who are still to be born. That this dream that we need to reinvent, we can never do it if we talk about it without acting on it. So the job ahead is long, and that we need to continue to work. Let me, at that point, then thank the following people for making it possible for us to be here tonight. The Hans Seidel Foundation, who is a donor of the Nelson Mandela Foundation. The speakers tonight, Pro Group and Zim Media, who curated the exhibition. The NMF team, for making it possible for us to even have the work that was done tonight. And you all for coming tonight. May you continue this dream, reimagining the dream. And we will get back to you about convening another dialogue. I'm glad that the Curator Foundation is here. Thank you very much. I'd like to